What is up, guys? This is your boy NCSO7 here, and welcome back to another review video. And if you guys haven't noticed, I have made a lot of videos and I've talked a lot about one of the games that I've been excited for the most this year, and that being Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's finally time to review this game after 100%ing the game twice, so I think that right there can probably summarize my thoughts on the game very well. But without further ado, let's hop into this and start off with the presentation. Now, the presentation for this game is pretty good. However, though, it is not a full sequel. And even Insomniac Games also mentioned this as well. This is not a full sequel to Spider-Man PS4, but it's instead more of an extension. It's as if Spider-Man PS4 just kept going, but this time with Miles instead of Peter Parker. And you know what? It's fine. I'm completely fine with it. Even though it has been quite a while since Spider-Man PS4 came out, I'm fine with it. And you'll probably notice why it's called an extension rather than a sequel later in the video with some of the stuff, but overall, it's pretty good. And in terms of its presentation and graphics and whatnot, it's really solid. And this is coming from someone who played the PS4 version, so I have not seen the PS5 version with my own eyes. That isn't a YouTube video, but the PS4 version of the game, oh my god, is it beautiful. It's really good, and the game performs really well as well. But I will say, there are times where the game can look a little Also, performance isn't necessarily as good on PS4 as it is on PS5, but that's kind of to be expected. This is supposedly a next-gen title, even though they're releasing it on last-gen. But even so, though, the presentation for the game is really good. And for the story of the game, well, basically your favorite best friend basically betrays you. There's also this new company that's trying to use this new form to basically wipe out all of Harlem, and you have to stop it. Ultimately, that's the simple breakdown, but honestly, just play the game for yourself to view the rest. Honestly, the story isn't too bad, but I will kind of get back to it a little bit later. It is a bit short, but we'll get to that a little later. But next, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, the gameplay is pretty much similar to Spider-Man PS4. There aren't really that many differences. It's basically the same game. The new addition, though, are new Venom punches and attacks. Essentially, there's this meter that charges up. Now, in Spider-Man PS4, you could use this to regenerate health or save it up for a finisher move. However, this time they also give you the option to use a Venom Attack. Now, Venom Attacks are basically electric attacks that you can use on the enemies, such as a Venom Punch that can go straight forward, or a Venom Jump that can launch a bunch of enemies in the air, and so on and so forth. And while they are cool, it really isn't that unique, to be fully honest, when compared with what they could have done. Also, there are certain enemies that you can only attack with the Venom Punch, and the thing about the Venom Punch is that it builds up over time. However, you have to build it up by fighting other enemies. But imagine if the last enemy you have to fight is one of the shield guys, and you have to Venom Punch, but your meter isn't high enough. You basically have to just wait for a long time until you can eventually Venom Attack and then destroy him. So it is kind of spoopy that they couldn't really do it, but it's not that big of a deal, and honestly, there are ways to fill in a better way. It's just a little annoyance I had. And that's pretty much it for the gameplay. Honestly, it's not that bad at all, but it just doesn't have that much new stuff compared to Spider-Man PS4. And it actually removes a few things that Spider-Man PS4 did. Remember when in that one it used circuit puzzles and the substance puzzles and did some really interesting stuff? This game does not even have those at all. And I know they're not there because I played the game 100% twice and they're not anywhere. So it kind of feels like they didn't really do enough with it. Ultimately, it's just the same gameplay over and over, which is fine, but when you compare it to Spider-Man PS4, it's not nearly as good as an experience as that game was. But even so, though, the gameplay is still really solid. And control-wise, it's completely fine. Not really much to say there. Now, in terms of the content, and I kind of mentioned this in the story section, that the story is short. That's because this game's incredibly short. This game is only 16 missions long for the whole main story. that is that's practically like a third of Spider-Man PS4. Now, again, I do know that this was supposed to be an extension of Spider-Man PS4 and not necessarily a big sequel. But the thing is, Spider-Man PS4 is less money, but you get not only a lot more with it, but you also get a much bigger experience. Here, it's kind of half or even a third of the game, as there's just not enough to it. Now, there is a lot of stuff to do on the side, and I'll be honest, it's pretty good. There's these time capsules you can find, these caches you can find. There's also these Roxxon labs, or these like underground hideout places where it's basically a huge battle against stuff. There's also a lot of side missions, and they also introduce a new phone app that you can essentially use to load up crimes or potential other side missions to complete. And I like it. It's a very cool idea, and it actually is one of the few PS4 games I have played that actually does a good use of using the touchpad for this action, even though it's just swiping left. But it is still a new addition. But even so, it doesn't really change the fact that it's basically Spider-Man PS4, but kind of stripped down. Now, I'm talking about this as if it was a bad thing. And on one end, it is. People may want a longer game out of this, especially since this is more money than Spider-Man PS4 right now. However, though, I will say this. I would recommend going for 100%. If you're going to get this game, I would really recommend going for a 100% run. Because honestly, if you just play the main story, it might take you I'd estimate maybe 8 hours possibly 8 hours to go through the main story without almost anything else. Now, if you're going to go for 100%, well, that'd be a bit longer. But honestly speaking, it isn't that much longer. It'd probably double the time, which would make it 16 hours. And I will be honest, I don't know. It's just, I feel like they could have put a lot more in the game, because once you kind of complete the game, that's kind of it. But honestly, it isn't that big of a deal. And you know what? It does make this game much easier to complete. And it's a much better game for completionists to complete. So honestly, in terms of content, it could be a lot better. However, it isn't really atrocious. It's just a small little thing I have, even though I didn't really make it that small. Next, the game's soundtrack. I don't really have much to say. It's pretty good. And now finally to the review. Honestly, this game is very good, but is it better than Spider-Man PS4? No, Spider-Man PS4 is just a better experience. Also, it was the one that came out first, so ultimately already has that advantage by default. And Miles Morales is a really good game, but it just doesn't feel nearly as substantial as that of Spider-Man PS4. It feels like they left things out and just kind of stripped the game a little bit because of time limitations. And yeah, but the thing is, and what I will say here is that even though it may not be that long of a game, it has a lot of fun in it. If you get this game, you're going to have fun. It's a great game, and for your PS5, you probably already have it if you have a PS5. Honestly, I don't really know what else to say. It's a very good game, but it could be a lot more. However, though, hopefully the possible sequel will be a much bigger and better thing, if it's going to happen. So, on my scale of 0 to 10, I give Miles Morales, the PS4 version, an 8.5 out of 10. It's very good, but it does have issues. But overall, I really did enjoy the game, and I would really recommend playing it to anyone who've played Spider-Man PS4. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know if you guys agree with my review. Also, if you're brand new to my channel, why not hit the subscribe button? It'd be really appreciated. And with that, NCSO 7 is finally out. Peace!
It's showtime! Did you enjoy the show? Well, time for the highlights.